Okay, so this here is going to be more of a continuation video to my thoughts on Mandalorian Episode 5, or Chapter 13 of this second season. This is mainly going to be continuing my thoughts on Ahsoka. Now, I've had some time to think about this. Roughly 3-4 days to think about Ahsoka and her new appearance. And I think that now that I have time to respond, just really think about it, just watch the episode a couple more times, I think I'm fine with it. I think I have a much better appreciation now than I did before with Rosario Dawson. And that's what happens when you have a first initial reaction. But you shouldn't just throw away your initial reaction, because your initial reaction can be very important. They could tell you how it is your thought process is working to come up with that thought. Because you could be looking at it a bit more analytically, you could be looking at it very nitpicking, or you could just be looking at it at just a casual enjoyment. Lots of fans are saying that this is their favorite episode, which, I can understand that. Ahsoka is a popular character, and that's enjoyable. Personally, I think that the episode itself is okay. There's some things that just don't really hold up well for me, especially just the villains. I don't really care for the villains this episode. They're not really brought up enough, not really well defined enough through the story. There's that one villager dude who becomes the leader at the end, and I kind of wish there was more backstory with him as to who this guy is and why he's now the leader. I don't know, just give a little information from him, about him, maybe information from him about the state of what's going on, a little history of these people, because I know that some people were not feeling the stakes of these episodes as to why is it important that this leader be brought down. Although, of course, we see them torture people, we see them kill people, they're not nice to the people, they don't care about the people. That's one way, but who are these people is probably a good question to ask. If we knew who these people were, we could probably have a bit more of a personal connection to these people, and thus, when Ahsoka defeats these villains, there'd be much more of a triumphant moment. I had a correction to make about her, because when my review, I was talking about her mantras, her head tails, her leku. They're called leku, not Lucas. That I figured I was pronouncing it wrong, because Luca, it does sound like it could be correct, but leku is the correct pronunciation and spelling. So yeah, I've been doing some digging, and I know that there's a lot of people complaining about the size of her mantras, of her leku, how it's short enough. And I had that thought too. I knew that it was too short. I knew that, and I said that in my review. But I also knew that there was a reason as to why that happened. And, the reason has to be that, well, for performance side, it was probably in the way. And you know what? It's not that big a deal that her leku is not the proper size, It's not. It's kind of like you need the impression that those head tails, they exist, and they're part of a character. The actual length of their size doesn't really matter. And, it's something that you can just compare and contrast to different versions. In a book, something could be so giant versus if you look at the screen, it's smaller than what it should be. And those creative decisions have to be made. In terms of the mantras, the reason why they're shorter is because they've tested this. And it did not work for the action scenes, in which people are saying, well, just do something else for the action scenes. I get that. And in a way, I could agree with that, but at the same time, it's like, they probably did more testing too. They probably didn't have the time. There could be so many reasons, and I'm sure there is a reason why. They probably felt that this decision to keep it the way it is was the best decision. And it would have probably been cumbersome, even in just normal conversation, to have her head tails be the way they are. Now, there's also a bit of discussion on the actual quality of her Lekus. Some say that they look terrible. I don't agree 100%, but I get where they're coming from. I did think that her Lekus and her Montrals did look a bit weird. They kind of looked like foam. Looked more foamy than what they should be. And they always compare it to the image of Shakti that was beautifully detailed, and it just looked like something proper. But I don't think it's really fair to say that they should step up to that quality, because where are we? Like, this is The Mandalorian. It's a TV show. TV shows typically don't have the same amount of money that a big feature movie does. That doesn't mean that The Mandalorian doesn't have a lot of money. They have a lot of money. You've seen the work they've put into this. Like, they've had a freaking crate dragon. They've had these giant spiders. We've had TIE fighters. We have explosions. You've had lots of CG characters. You got all the costumes with the Quarren. And we have things that are yet to come. All those things cost a lot of money. The volume is expensive to make, which is why in the first season they didn't have all those big set pieces and the action pieces, because the volume cost a lot of money. The reason why we're even allowed to have the Krayt Dragon is because the volume's already built. You don't have to spend all that money to create the volume, so they could do that. And so really, I feel like they have to save their budget because they have to do everything else. If we spent all this money on making Ahsoka's Leku perfect, the proper consistency, would we have all the money left? Probably not. And you people, you say like, oh, you could just do this technique or that technique. It probably works differently on camera. Because I was reading this Vanity Fair article where they interviewed Rosario and Filoni. And they were talking about their process, like testing this character. And something that came up that I just didn't really think about is the makeup to make her orange. When they were testing the makeup, something came up where the reflection in the volume made her look very differently. And I thought about that and was like, oh, interesting. Because you don't really worry about that in animation, because animation, you could be more consistent. In real life, that will change. The way my skin is will change upon the color. The way my hair is will change upon the lighting. Because, typically my hair is pretty red. But in some lighting, it could be more brown, depending on how it is. I mean, my beard, not my hair. With that said, they did some testing on Ahsoka. They made sure that the color for the makeup is right. They made sure that the Leku fit for her. And not just her, but like the actress. The actress was perfectly shaped for those... Sorry, the Lekus are perfectly shaped for Rosario Dawson. So, a lot of work was put into this. And more work could have put into this, but keep in mind, they don't have the same amount of time as the prequels did. back then, Star Wars took 3 years to make for each movie. During the prequel trilogy. So they had more time to develop these costumes. They had more money. They had more of everything. Here, you have to do this in half the time. Does that end up with not as fancier looking designs? Yes. But sacrifices can be made. Yes, it didn't look the way we wanted to, but it gave the impression of what they wanted to go for. Is Ahsoka's montrals longer for her character? Yes. Did we see that visually on screen? No. But we as an audience should know that some details don't always have to matter. Is it important that her montrals be the right length? Not really. What's important is that we have montrals to begin with. If they were really short, then we have something to complain about. But they're a proper enough length to give the impression that this is Ahsoka, that this is recognizable as Ahsoka. And that's what we got. We got a recognizable Ahsoka, and you know what? As much as I would have liked to have things 100% perfect, this is what we got. I get the impression of this being Ahsoka, and I think it's good. Then, of course, there's my thoughts about Ashley not being Ahsoka. Again, in a perfect world, Ashley would be Ahsoka. But with this live-action chance, it gives Rosario Dawson the chance, the opportunity to show off how she could pull off an Ahsoka character. Which, that's what I wanted to do. They could have robbed her performance by having Ashley voice the character. But that takes a lot of time and a lot of work. And again, when you're working on a TV show like this, you don't always have that time. And also, the world ended in 2020. So your schedule doesn't always allow for things to happen. You've seen it in a lot of TV shows this year where they had to cut things short because they couldn't make it. Luckily for Mandalorian, they filmed pretty much everything, so they're good for now. Yes, I would have loved to have a perfect Ahsoka with Ashley always voicing her. But I know that's not always the case. Hayden Christensen did not voice Anakin in the Clone Wars. Neither did Ewan McGregor voice him in the Clone Wars. Does that mean that we bring those voices to live action? No. Sometimes you can't just do that. But you say, aha, but they did that with Darth Maul. Yeah, they did. But Darth Maul was there for how long? 30 seconds? Maybe less? That's not that long. They did a lot of work for that, but that's not that long. Both of the actors were there. They were able to mimic each other's performance, but it's not a long scene to do versus a whole episode of redubbing and matching performances. It's not practical to do it. And here we are. I said this before, it's not practical, so I can understand why Ashley's not involved, but I do kind of wish if there was an answer of whether or not she could be involved, because I don't really know that. With that said, I know that a lot of people are disappointed with having the Ahsoka being Rosario Dawson. I know that they would have wanted someone else. I know that some people were saying that we should have had, I believe, I don't remember the actors' names, but it was Laura or Haley or something. Another actress that they said looked like Ahsoka. And of course, I've seen the images. I think that smile perfectly matches Ahsoka. But I don't think they're thinking about this correctly, because she looks like a younger Ahsoka. Versus, we're dealing with a much older Ahsoka. And for that, I think Rosario Dawson matches the older Ahsoka better than this younger actress. So there's my reasoning for that one. And then just people are upset in general. They feel like the character wasn't really came off properly. Which, yeah, I could see that. This Ahsoka was a bit more different the way she was done. But, we have to trust Dave. He knows what he's doing. He's been dealing with this character for roughly 12 years now. Because, he was developing the character before she first appeared. And so, we have to trust that he knows how this character works. That he trusts, that he tells his actors how these characters work. So, with that said, I think this is the final Ahsoka. I don't think that she was out of character at all in this, as some people would think. I think everyone's always going to be disappointed about something. Nothing can ever be perfect here. There's always just something to be disappointing. Was I slightly disappointed by something in Ahsoka? Yeah, of course. There are many things that I could point out that I haven't. They're not really important at all. But I'm not going to let that ruin my enjoyment of this character and what she means. Our version of Ahsoka today did not ruin Ahsoka. She's still Ahsoka. She still fights for the lightsabers. She still stands for what she stands for, honestly. Like, nothing's really changed. She's just in a different story. She has a different actress. And she looks slightly different. But that doesn't really mean that Ahsoka's different at all. No. She's still the same. With that said, I think, yeah, I'm fine with this Ahsoka. I think she's good. Is she perfect? Nothing's ever perfect. But she's good, and she pulls it off well. Could some things be worked on for the future? Oh, yes, of course. I'm sure they will. Speaking of some more things, in the Vanity Fair article, Rosario was talking about how she was on set during season 1, like testing the makeup and the costume. And she was there the day that George Lucas had that famous photo with the Baby Yoda. And what's fun about that is that she was saying that she was actually slightly off screen of that photo. And I just thought that was just so crazy. Just imagine if that was a video. You could just turn that video slightly over and you could see Ahsoka Tano. That's just crazy to think about. Like, what's not seen in that photo is something very crazy important. And that's I love that. I just love that. I also love that they thought about this character for a long time. They've been thinking about Ahsoka since season 1. And they've been testing her since season 1. So, it's great. I love that. So, yeah. I'm fine with this Ahsoka. I think she looks cool. I think her performance, she feels like a much older Ahsoka. And you know what? That's good. That's good. That's fine. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you all next time. Bye.